hello again, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café, and happy Mother's Day out there to all you moms. I'm producer and volunteer Rick McNamer. Every Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m., your host, Ray Gary, puts together a panel of guests to discuss topics of interest in our community. Listeners can participate by texting questions or comments to 541-661-4098. Again, that's 541-661-4098. Now here's Ray to tell us about today's show.
Well, we don't have a panel of guests today. We actually have one. And this is kind of a special show. We have Robert O'Sullivan here, and he is going to be telling us and playing some of his late wife's music and telling us about some of her other accomplishments. So,
okay,
take it away, Robert.
My wife was a very distinguished person, both as a musician and as an attorney, and I thought I'd start by sharing some of her music. Much of it is on a music channel on YouTube under Alice Wildermuth O'Sullivan, and what I'm playing today is called Bumble Boogie Redux. Bumble Boogie was a famous piece of very fast jazz music by a man named Jack Fina, and Alice is going to be playing it 3 times right now in a 6-minute period. First with a big band. For 20 years, she was a keyboardist with a 18-piece big band in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco area. And then she's going to play it on a solo piano piece. And then, as a unique talent that she has, she's going to play it with some of the music being played with the left hand on the piano and with the right hand on some bell instruments. So you're now going to hear about 6 minutes and 15 seconds of Alice Wildermuth O'Sullivan playing Bumble Boogie.
Well, that was just absolutely amazing. You know, it's always amazed me how people can play the piano at all. If you're playing one thing with your left hand, but she's not only playing left foot, but she's playing 2 different instruments, one with one hand and one with the other. Is this YouTube? So people can watch this on YouTube if they want to?
Yes, it's under Alice Wildermuth, Wildermuth. That was her maiden name, O'Sullivan. And that is called Bumble Boogie Redux, and it's got pictures of bumblebees dancing with the music, and a couple German Shepherds pups running around, and finally her playing this piece at a concert where you could see her playing the piano with her left hand and a xylophone-type instrument with her right hand. Needless to say, she was very gifted and very versatile in what she could do with her music.
And she was gifted from a very, very early age. Am I correct on that?
Yes, indeed. Her public first performance as a musician was when she was not quite 5. The family was living in Klamath Falls. They were members of the local Lutheran church. The church had no organist for Christmas Eve. Her father was on the council. And he said, well, my daughter knows all the Christmas carols, and she's had a couple of piano lessons. Maybe she could be the organist. And lo and behold, she was. And by her 5th birthday, which was like 3 weeks on, she became the regular organist at the church in Klamath Falls until such a time as she moved in about 6th grade to Modesto, where she soon became the organist at the Lutheran church there. So it did start very early.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
An organ and a piano, both keyboard instruments, are they played exactly the same, or?
Not exactly, because the resonance of music on a piano depends on how hard you hit the piano key, while the resonance of the music on an organ is how long you have your finger down on the organ key.
Okay.
So it's the keyboard is the same, but the response of the instrument is different.
So she was able to go from a few lessons with the piano to playing an organ at the church.
Yeah. The only trouble was she couldn't reach the pedals yet, and she had, and not only that, she didn't read music. In fact, she said she thought the notations on the page was just some sort of decorations, but she knew the hymns or the Christmas carols by heart, by listening to them on the radio and what have you. So it was no particular problem, but pretty soon she did learn how to read music.
Oh, and she had only been through a couple of Christmases to listen to it. It's not like she'd been listening to Christmas music her whole life.
Not when you're not quite 5 years old.
Yes, you've had 5 chances, or 4 chances.
Yeah.
That sounds very, is it prodigy, young people that you see that, where does that come from? Who knows? But it sounds like she had it.
Well, the
Pretty special.
ancient philosophers used to talk about there being music in the spheres. And I remember shortly after I got to know her writing her a poem, which said something like, more music than the spheres dare offer. And she just had an amazing ability to hear some music once and she could play it right back, and she had perfect pitch, and anyway, she was indeed musically very gifted.
Hey, if you want to make some comments, just want to remind you that you can send us a text, and we will read it right here on the air. We have operators standing by, ready to get your questions. It's 541-661-4098. 541-661-4098. Operators are standing by.
And this is the first radio station I know of that has textual intercourse as one of its features.
Okay.
And we're allowed to say that on...
I don't know.
You betcha, Red Rider.
I don't know. These FCC guys may be kicking in the door at any. That's a very woke thing, and we try hard not to be terribly woke.
I want to say something else that was relatively early in life that shaped her career in major ways, and that was when she was in high school. She was known around the town of Modesto as a gifted young musician, and the word got out that if service clubs or nursing homes or any organization wanted a good pianist to play for an event that they were having, just call up the music department at the high school, and they would facilitate that. And it was something Alice enjoyed because it got her out of class, and classes she found pretty boring. But there was one particular event was at the home of the president of the Modesto chapter of the American Association of University Women. Lived in a fancy house in town. Alice had often driven by it and wondered about it, and there was a nice piano there, and it seemed a nice event. She got there early, talked to the hostess, and had prepared printed programs so everyone was going to be there, and the hostess looked at it, and her immediate response was, "What? No Chopin?" And Alice responded, "Well, I tried to balance my program and was careful in my selections, but I didn't include any." And the hostess says, "There must be Chopin." And this did not go kindly with Alice. She actually did play some Chopin at the event. I think the Polonaise, which is a famous Chopin piece. But that day, she decided, and she was probably 15 or so, that she didn't want her livelihood to be related to music, or at least to the type of music that involves rich patrons who have their own ideas to how her musical life should be performed. And at that point, she had worked some in a law office as a typist. Anyone who's a good pianist can likely be a good typist, and decided at that time that she would try to pursue a life to become a lawyer rather than primarily a musician, because she just didn't like that woman's attitude, and it reminded her of how rich women would treat her mother, who was a professional tailor, and she just didn't want to be part of that syndrome, and decided to become a lawyer then. She did become one, only it took a while and took a very unusual route. Most lawyers become eligible to take the bar by finishing law school and that way. But in her case, she went to a night law school for several years, was really busy, had some health issues, and dropped out of the night law school and did what is called law office study. Before there were law schools in this country, people like Abraham Lincoln and Clarence Darrow would study with another lawyer or a judge to become certified to take the bar, and then they would become a lawyer that way. There's only one state left that still allows that, and that's California. And she became a lawyer that way by working as a paralegal in a law office, and of course she had to pass the bar after being made eligible to take it. But very few even get to the bar by that way, and those that do, very few actually passed it. And she also had another rather unusual thing related to that, is she managed to give a solo piano concert in Carnegie Hall and pass the California bar within 12 months of each other.
Sounds like she was an energetic person. I get tired just listening to that.
The brilliance just kept going. And then, and thank you, Robert, you set me in kind of prepping for this show, some of the material, and it was amazing. So her law education, like you said, was kind of done the old-fashioned way, if you will.
Much of it.
Not
yes.
really.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they can kind of coax a lot of these lawyers through it, and they still have trouble passing the bar. And from what I hear, I'm definitely not a lawyer.
Very few passed the first time.
Okay. Yeah,
my understanding.
And Alice did. Is that right? Passed the bar the first time?
Actually, it was in two steps. In those days, there was a first step which was called the multi-state, which was something that was used for law tests across the nation. And she passed that on the first try, but the written part she passed on the second try.
Oh gosh.
She wasn't perfect in all this.
One little chink in the armor then. Yeah. No, that was that dad. What a fascinating lady. Really was.
So when they reading the law, they call that, right? If you didn't go to law school.
Yes.
There was a Supreme Court justice that did that, wasn't there? I believe he was also the judge in the Nuremberg trials too, had never been to law school.
I am not aware of that.
Then he later became a Supreme Court justice.
I know you're talking about, but I don't know about his legal education.
Okay.
So anyhow, the part of the musical brilliance of Alice was it was only not just in one genre of music. She was classically trained, and indeed her family was able to hook her up with a world-famous classical musician, Egon Petri. He was Dutch. He was taught in Berlin for a long time, although the Nazi thing was coming on and he had to leave. His wife was Jewish. He lived in Poland for a while, and later had an arrangement that he was teaching at both Cornell on the East Coast and Mills College on the West Coast. And because of his Mills College connection, she became a student of his in her early teens. I think she was probably 13 or so. And he was closely associated with the composer Busoni. The two of them did the most famous of the Bach transcriptions for piano of a lot of Bach music. And indeed, one of his transcriptions of Bach was of Sheep May Safely Graze, and any piano concert that she gave, she usually ended with that, and we'll end with it today if all the devices work properly here. So.
It's a good chance we'll do that. I mean, we have a crew here that knows what they're doing.
We scrambled it first to get everything, but I think we got it down. You know, and you're right about the genres, if you will. I was able to pull up a few of the YouTubes, and I hope I get this correct, but I heard her and an orchestra, if you will. L.B. Do I have this right? L.B. Corey?
L.B.
Coy. They did a
C-O-Y.
rendition of her playing the piano. I don't know who the singer was, but it was from the classic movie Casablanca, As Time Goes By.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful. I thought it was better than what was in the movie.
Uh-huh.
Really, really impressive. Yeah.
And curiously, another part of her skills is had to do with black music. When she was again a teenager, she had an opportunity to study with I'm blanking on his name right now. A very famous Hollywood black musician figure. He's the one who wrote. I'm blanking again.
Well, we all have those blank moments.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that appeared in a movie, something about some nuns in the Southwest desert.
Lilies of the Field.
Lilies of the Field. Anyway, he was one who really popularized African American spirituals, and she had a chance to learn with him as a teenager. And for 6 or 7 years in her career, she directed a choir that was mainly African Americans. It had a contingent of South Africans in it, and they once did a version of Every Time I Feel a Spirit, where a South African version of that was sung, and then the American spiritual was sung, and with jazz musicians accompanying it, and it was a really classic thing, and that's up on her YouTube channel as well. So,
What did she think of rock and roll?
she was kind of bored by it, and this was maybe more my feeling than hers. But when rock and roll went in the direction of the electric guitar, it was maybe not the best direction to go. That's
going pretty far back. But Chuck Berry probably was the guy that did.
And then Bob Dylan appeared at a Newport Folk Festival with electronic stuff, and everybody was appalled. But I know that some types of music she might say, oh, they only use 3 chords or 4 chords or something like that, and that to
Ain't no rules in rock and roll, though. You just do what you want.
I guess that's indeed true.
Yeah, I wonder what she would have thought, or probably did have some thoughts on, of talking about when electric, Chuck Berry had, and then into the 60s where the music became considerably more sophisticated with much better music arrangements and things like that. An example would be the music from Hair, when music like that.
Well, she found it interesting, and I remember once she was asked to be the pianist of a rock and roll band that was playing at a big Air Force or a Navy base in Silicon Valley at the Officers Club or something like that. And she said it was kind of fun, but she was very definitely more into jazz and classical music, and in church music, of course, she directed choirs, often using pretty sophisticated pieces of music like Benjamin Britten's Ceremony of Carols, and which he would direct from the choir, and it was amazing how much directing she could do with her eyes and her facial expressions while still pounding out whatever accompaniment needed to be pounded out on the piano. And I'm going to try and call up another thing if I get my device to work properly here, where she played with an extraordinarily fine jazz clarinetist on some of these jazz spiritual type things.
Well, while you're looking, I have to go back to Ray's point. Had she gone into rock and roll, she probably would have been one of the best with her talent.
I know a woman who's a classical pianist, and her husband told me something that she
Here we go.
didn't really want to be known. She played Inagata Davida at the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh. On the drums? No.
No, she was,
Okay.
yeah, and she.
All right.
It's not something she talks about.
Well, I was going to play another one, but this is Martin Luther King's favorite hymn, Precious Lord. And the clarinet soloist, as well as the trombonist, will be part of it.
Okay.
And this was another thing she directed from the piano with a church choir in Oakland, California. I think I'll end it here because we have only 20 minutes or so left, and I want to talk a little about Alice as an attorney.
Great.
Let me do a quick station break before you start on that. You're listening to KCIWLP in beautiful Brookings, Oregon, and this is Curry Café that you're listening to. And today we have Robert O'Sullivan, who's bringing in some music and some stories about his late wife, Alice.
And we did get a text I want to read, but I had real quick. But before that, along with Alice's influence in African-American spirituals, I did read that where she was highly influenced by her parents to get into the social and economic justice of people, and that kind of probably influenced her in that way.
Very definitely. And Mike earlier sent me a note about how did we meet. And it just so happens that both of us wound up being hired by the same church in Burlingame, California, within a month or two of each other. I had been in schools going sort of heading toward the ministry, but having doubts about whether I wanted to go to the next step. I needed some money. I took a year off. I went to work in a post office, but a church in Burlingame had a youth director, parish assistant position suddenly open. Someone was hired by the national church, and they want somebody to fill in for a year, and it fit nicely, and I wound up doing that. And about a month later, Alice was hired to be the organist there. And curiously, we didn't really hit it off well at first until we both discovered that the others were concerned about farm worker issues in California. And this is late 50s, early 60s, and before Cesar Chavez. But her father was a labor guy, a carpenters union executive, head of the Modesto or Santa Clara County Central Labor Council. And so it's that element that she got from her parents about being concerned about justice was something that was ingrained deeply with her, and something that was important to me as well. I was active in civil rights from my teenage years, and when we discovered that, we kind of started a romance. It was unusual because I was off in the Midwest and Europe and a couple of years in Africa while we were trying to keep in touch, but it turned out into a 51-year marriage that was very wonderful and productive in a lot of different ways.
That's great. Soulmates were connected, it sounds like.
It indeed was in many ways. And
Right.
And that hook with labor and law, she, after college, worked as a legal secretary and paralegal in a basically labor law firm. And that's where she wound up doing her law office study and developed into the specialty of workers' comp. Now, workers' compensation is not the most spectacularly famous part of the law. It's largely done by administrative law judges. There's no big things happening like with a big plane crash or a big murder or things whereby lawyers became famous, but it's kind of a plug away. It's not terribly lucrative end of the law, but it was one she kind of naturally got into after being in this labor law context. And in the process, she became a specialist. In California, many states, their bar associations develop specialties, and it's a good thing to do. It's a way of being guaranteed that the person is competent in the area of law that you're asking them to function in. They have to prove that they've done a certain amount of work in that area of work, provide examples of their work, get testimonies by judges and other attorneys. And she became a specialist in that. And then she became the head of the law section of the specialization of the workers' comp session, and then she became the chair of the whole California State Bar's Board of Legal Specialization, even though it was a kind of low-profile type specialty she had. And then she got appointed to a national board called the National Board of Trial Advocacy. And as that name implies, it's largely of trial lawyers. And trial lawyers are not necessarily good lawyers, but lucky lawyers. Or they had a relative who was killed in a terrible accident, or they had some ambulance chasers who somehow got contracts to do that sort of thing. But they're often people who became famous and pretty rich in the process. And this board was dominated by those, but she and some other women from California came from other specialties like family law and started transforming this national board into one that saw its scope as in trial advocacy as being beyond the trial lawyer type remains. And recently I learned that one thing, most specialization programs are done by local government, by state governments, by their local bar exams, but some require national specialization. And one that Alice advocated for 10 years ago was to have a national specialization in immigration law. And it just has been granted by the American Bar Association to this board that Alice was part of, and where she advocated that they do this. So what's more timely right now than having real specialists in that law recognized and honored for their hard work and their new specialty.
And
You'd
boy,
probably be very upset with the way things are going right now, I would think.
Oh, indeed. I mean, anyone who concerned about things like habeas corpus and due process of law is going to be deeply concerned about what's going on right now.
and she would be on fire right now, I believe, if she were around to tackle some of these cases that are going on.
With the speed of the xylophone numbers on. She did that same kind of number on other famous pieces like Bolero and Ritual Fire Dance. And if you go to the YouTube channel, you can enjoy a lot of really good music.
It's quite a show. It's quite a show. And I haven't seen probably 1/10 of what she's done, or if not more. You know, you're right. Back to her law background. I did see where she was named super lawyer, Northern California super lawyer, 12 times for doing workman's comp cases.
Yes.
And okay, they might not be the sexiest cases, but boy, how important are they to the working people?
Oh, for sure.
Like myself, I think we all had a lot of jobs. Now, knock on wood, I never had to use it, but I had a lot of people that had to use that, injured with either faulty products that the company was using or, abuse. And that's a very important field that we need.
Yeah, and it's a very flawed system. It was created a long time ago with the element of it being a no-fault system. That means you don't have to prove that the boss, the company was responsible if they're working for the company and it's related to the work. You don't have to prove that, but the monetary amounts are often lower than they really should be, and there's also often been a too cozy relationship between some insurance companies and some lawyers, and
Pretty common.
and in Alice's case, she found working as a so-called applicant's attorney in the field to be hard. You have to work on your own, and she did go to work for some insurance companies, but she carried her bias in favor of the injured worker with her, but at the same time kept the insurance companies happy by keeping costs down. And what happened in a lot of the insurance companies is the big cases would be given to outside counsel, and the small cases would be given to in-house counsel. And there was often a not terribly favorable relationship between the claims agents and the outside counsel because they were running up costs. They were having depositions, doctors' interviews, and all this, not necessarily to improve their representation on the case. It was just part of the all too friendly relationship between outside counsel and some of the insurance company workers. Well, Alice would say, we don't have to go through all this stuff. We know what this case is worth. And besides, these guys are going on vacation with each other, and they're going golfing together. We don't need to keep them happy. We're here to design benefits, to get benefits that are deserved by people who were injured on their job. So when the insurance company was happy, while she was really serving kind of as an advocate for the person who was injured, that was a remarkable thing that she was able to do.
Sound like she cut through a lot of the, quote, I guess, red tape.
Yes,
and
indeed.
trying to balance everybody out. I
And
mean, how much better can you get than that?
well, she was recognized broadly for her willingness to do that, and I wish there were many more like her throughout the industry.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
So you have a text?
Oh, gosh, yes. Thank you, Ray. We did get a text,
Okay.
and thank you. Again, our line is text line 541-661-4098. Goes back to the text says, what's the story of her Carnegie Hall performance?
She always wanted to play at Carnegie Hall. She sent them an audition tape of her playing, and they, just set up renting the hall and all of that. It's a place that invites, top-level artists, has their own way of presenting them, but it also is available, and it wasn't exactly, it was an evening performance. It seems to me it was like 2 p.m, and that, but it was, a dream that she had from a young kid, and she indeed pulled it off. And
2 p.m, check the box.
yes.
Were you there?
Yes,
Robert?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
And her whole office was there virtually with her to see her perform. And
What an honor.
yeah, she was a busy woman. She most of her life was the music director of churches, 3 or 4 different ones, and she often had like an adult choir and a youth choir and a handbell choir, and she even had kids as young as 4 or 5 playing handbells in church music, and But I want to tell you one funny story related to probably the most famous jazz musician she ever played with was Louis Bellson. Louis Bellson was famous as a drummer for Count Basie, and played some for Ellington and other big groups, and had his own big band. L.B. Coy Orchestra, which was the big band Alice played with, and his big band had a joint session together in a large warehouse building in Silicon Valley. The man who was also a drummer with L.B.'s band, owned a music store where they had rental rooms for people who wanted to learn how to practice, and they sold instruments, but they also had a big performance space. But it was in a warehouse, and they were doing this performance, a joint one with the 2 big bands, and all of a sudden the power went out. And it was a warehouse with no windows. And so everybody had their music stands with lights on them, and they all went out. But Alice and the drummer, Louis Belson, kept playing. And they played for like 10, 12 minutes together. It was on Satin Doll. And anyway, and afterwards, he came over to her and said, "You're all right, kid," which was quite the compliment from him.
Quite the improvisation at the time.
Oh, I bet. They just kept playing, and everybody else was just listening and enjoying.
And I have to ask, Alice has played with various people. Was she ever in one particular band for a while? And also, how did these other people, they just knew of her from her other performances and then would ask her to play with them?
Yeah. Well, she played with the same big band for over 20 years.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't, a matter of her playing around with different groups a whole lot. But she was noted especially for how well she played the music of Count Basie and Duke Ellington, to the point when people in the band argued whether she should be known as the Countess or the Duchess. And she was really good at playing whatever was put before her.
The Countess, I did see that, and thank you I was going to ask about that one too, how that name came about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, quite the talent. Boy, oh boy. And looking back and reading her obituary, just so many fascinating things. Her parents, I understood, see now if I had this right, I have it written down and I don't see it now, Swedish and what was the other?
German.
Thank you. And I guess in the Lutheran church back then, that was kind of looked down upon. So they had to kind of be a little...
It was sort of an interracial marriage.
Unbelievable.
Well...
This is 1920s, I guess,
yeah,
when they got married.
Or 30s, yeah.
Okay.
And the various Northern European immigrants that were largely Lutheran who immigrated here often started kind of an ethnic Swedish Lutheran church or a Norwegian Lutheran church, so that they were not only ethnically but religiously somewhat divided than one might expect otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully. Well, unfortunately, some of that's still going on. I don't think it's with a Lutheran church, but yeah. Interesting to have to deal with that back then.
Yeah, well, it was funny, but...
Wow. And also in the looking back and some of the pictures I've seen, she was, as you are, I believe, very involved in the love of nature. A lot of the photographs I saw of her from a young girl on were always, not always, but mostly in a big garden with flowers or out in by a lake. That kind of stuff must have really influenced her, as it probably did you, as it does me, especially living up here.
Yeah, and in California, when we retired, her father died about 12 years earlier than her mother, and we had bought some property in Oakland, 2 houses over from where we lived, where her mother wound up living in a manufactured home on that site. When she died, we originally were going to sell it. Turned out it was tricky to sell a manufactured home without many comparables around, as the real estate industry does in a established old city like Oakland, and wound up donating the house and having it came in by wheels and it was left by wheels. We donated it to a nonprofit, and she made it into a garden, and a really nice little garden. And that but then the California drought came along, and watering became an issue in that garden. And she had often come up to the Oregon coast to pick huckleberries. And in the process, we started looking around for properties here that especially involved gardens, and found a pretty spectacular one. And she developed it in many, many remarkable ways. There were the former owner had a business there. He sold azaleas, and he had trellised out part of the land to just have a place where they could grow in pots on pebble soil. Well, she got all the pebbles moved and just planted azaleas there, and this was like 8-9 years ago, and they're really spectacular now. They're in their adolescence, and anyway, she had a gardening streak to her, and in her retirement, she also became a watercolorist. And
artist also.
Yes. And that particular, how she became that was pretty amazing. We were in Honolulu together. There was a place where she would swim laps and I would just sort of flop around in the water. And for a while, I didn't see her, and I was a little concerned, and then she reappeared, and my comment was, aren't we a little old to be playing hide and seek? And we went to a luncheon that afternoon, and would you behold the place where we ate, I had little cards on each table saying they had a hide and seek watercolor training session in a couple weeks, and why don't you come and... So she and another friend wound up going back to Hawaii a few weeks later, which coincided with a Bach concert by a friend of hers. And anyway, she and the first thing she did after she got home and did her own thing, not following the instructions at this workshop, she took into a store to get it framed, and the store owner immediately started negotiating with her about selling her watercolors there. So she was multi-talented in a lot of different ways.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. God, I had something else. Well, no, I lost my notes, but that's okay. Yeah, Don, Robert, did you have another piece that you wanted to play?
Yes,
before
I'm looking for.
We're down to 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it should be. Let me see if I can find exactly where it is. There's so many pieces of hers here. It's called "The Sheep May Safely Graze," as from Bach. Here it is. Here, Alice is going to comment about why she always played this "Sheep May Safely Graze" at the end of her concert.
Okay.
I always close with "Sheep may safely graze." And I usually comment that it's our hope that all of God's creatures, regardless of ethnicity or gender or where you come from or what you think, that all of us may safely graze. So I always think of that as I play this piece. It's by Bach, who's my favorite.
I'm going to throw in another one that I pulled up on YouTube that was quite amazing, and it's when she was playing, it was called Ritual Fire Dance, and that showed her playing all three, the piano, the xylophone, and the percussion.
What's called a bell tree.
What was that? Oh, the percussion?
Bell tree, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But we are winding down now, so let's see. Yeah, just got about 2.5 minutes. Well, anyway, Robert, thank you for all of that info. We're just about out of time, Robert. Thank you very much for bringing all this info and talking about your late wife, Alice, who was a brilliant, wonderful lady. And we're going to have to sign off here pretty quick. So thank you again.
And go to the Alice Wildermuth O'Sullivan YouTube channel to hear this music.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, that's great.
This has been KTIW LP 100.7 FM in Brookings, Oregon.